Welcome to this week's edition, everyone, of Military Trailblazer Office Hours. Thanks for taking time out of your Wednesday evening to spend it here in the spirit of community, mentorship, and learning. I'm your host, Dave Nava. I'm a lead solution engineer at Salesforce and a military trailblazer. And so each week we invite a co-host or co-host to take part in the conversation so we can leverage their experience, their expertise, and of course, their unique perspectives. The focus for tonight's session, as you can see from the slide, is exploring the admin and solution architect roles and best practices. And I want to briefly introduce our co-host for tonight's session, Gregg. Nana is a solution architect at VFB Consulting. She's also a Salesforce MVP Hall of Fame member, which means she's an MVP for life. She's a Financialforce Community Leader and a 6-time certified Trailhead Ranger. It is awesome to have you here, Nana. Welcome.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
Yeah, my pleasure. Do you want to take a moment and further introduce yourself and share your Salesforce story?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things David was talking to me about is sort of, talking a little bit about my journey as an admin and originally, and then coming into the architect world. And so I'll back up a little bit and I'm going to date myself. So way back in the early 2000s, I was working at a factory and worked on the factory floor of a jet engine turbine factory, and worked on the floor doing inspections, X-ray and fluorescent penetrant inspections, and then worked my way up kind of into the office where I got into continuous improvement, learned some Kaizen techniques, if you've heard about that, and was really kind of enjoying learning more about continuous improvement. But at the time, I had been at the factory for about 5 years, didn't have a college degree. And a lot of times when you get into factory life, you're there forever because they pay well, right? And they started to have layoffs. And at the time, I had a daughter who was 1, was newly married, and started thinking, wait, I'm probably on the list to be laid off soon. And do I want to go back to the factory floor where I had moved from, which might mean overnights or off shifts, right? Or do I want to take this opportunity to kind of, make a change in my life? And so I decided, along with my husband, of course, to take the opportunity and see what we could do to sort of make a change. And so I actually volunteered to be laid off and sort of said, you know what, I just want to get into kind of an office environment. I want to learn how to work in an office in a business setting. And I had never done that before. And took a job as an administrative assistant at an energy conservation company. So I was administrative assistant to the chief operating officer. And key number 1, have good mentors. He was a really great mentor, and he recognized that I was the type that I just wanted to learn everything. Just want to learn, just show me, I'll do it. Hand me something, I'll do it. And so went for several years where they just kind of handed me new jobs, and I worked my way up and around. And one day, in 2007, they called me in and said, "Hey, Nana, we're gonna do this thing in our marketing department, and we're gonna start using this tool called Salesforce." And it was summer of 2007. So that was the release where they announced Apex code was available for end users. Really, really early days. And they sent me to an admin class. And so again, always be learning, right? So I just wanted to soak it up. I wanted to learn something new. And really that was the start of my admin journey. And again, just constantly learning, just wanted to learn, give me things. And the cool thing about Salesforce, right, is that there's always something new to learn. There is no lack of it. And continued on the road there, moved to a couple of different companies, again, with good mentors who kind of recognized, hey, if they could, I was the type of person that if they kind of would nudge me or hand me something or give me the right encouragement, I could run with something. That embracing change, always be learning, show people what I'm doing, right? So that they know that I'm not working in the dark. And then worked for the last, up until January, I worked for Jones Lang LaSalle, big real estate company. I worked for a prior company that got acquired by Jones Lang LaSalle. and really just owned our org. So I was the admin and sort of just gradually became the architect as I continued to learn, right? You know the system really well, you know all of the other systems, and you just start learning and sort of organically through training and through learning and through working with other people in other departments, became an architect. It was really hard for me. I had a little bit of imposter syndrome thinking, wait, I'm an architect? But when you really look at what an architect does, it's somebody who kind of owns that space, right? You own that platform, you own those relationships with a lot of the other team players. And so at the beginning of this year, I moved over to VFP Consulting as a solution architect. So now I'm learning how to work with external customers instead of internal customers. And it's been a really fun journey. Who would have thought that, someone who didn't graduate college, who started out in a factory setting, right, could sort of get to this position. But there's a lot that's into it, right? It's embracing change. Sometimes change happens. It happens to you, whether you want it to happen to you or not. Or sometimes you choose it because there's a need for it. And then always be learning, right? Always be reaching out there and striving to figure out what you can do to help others, what you can do to help yourself.
That's awesome, Nana. Thanks very much for sharing your story. And I can definitely identify with the always be learning. It's one of the things I love most about the ecosystem. It doesn't matter what your background is. If you're willing to work hard, you can really carve out whatever you want as far as a niche in the ecosystem, just with hard work and with Trailhead and with leveraging, the community groups.
Yep, exactly.
Awesome. So we will go ahead and before we open the floor for discussion, I want to cover some admin items for folks that may be joining for the first time. I see some new faces out there, which is awesome. And so the purpose of these sessions essentially is an informal get-together for gathering with military trailblazers as well as allies. Everyone's welcome to attend, to explore non-technical Salesforce career and branding related topics to help you achieve your professional development and career related goals. So for the next hour, this is your opportunity for collaborative mentorship. Everyone on the call is encouraged to step up and help answer questions from your perspective, which will of course provide additional diversity of experience to the answers given. Do keep an eye on the chat window if you haven't been already. I and others on the call do post a lot of great information in there, and I've been doing that so far. If you joined the call late or you happen to miss some of the chats, no worries. I do upload it as a document to the YouTube recording, which I'll post with the help of my creative editor later. And you can catch up on anything you may have missed. If you want to ask a question at any point during the session, this is your session, so please feel free to do so. If you don't feel comfortable speaking up, you can either post your questions in chat, or if you do, you can raise your hand in the Google Meet app, and I'll go ahead and call on you, and we'll go from there. And so just to kind of open the floor, I'll go ahead and ask the first question. And if you guys and gals want to just start posting yours in the chat, we can go from there. So Nana, I know you started out as an admin, and then you moved on to solution architect role, and I do want to talk about that transition, but I guess we should probably start with your current role as a solution architect. Can you kind of describe that and talk about what that entails for folks who may not be familiar with that role?
Yeah, absolutely. So currently as a solution architect, what that really entails is we've got customer projects where we're implementing Salesforce solutions for customers. It's Salesforce and Financialforce. That's one of the little niches that we implement as well. And we put a project team together, and the project team might consist of a project manager and a managing consultant who's managing the relationship, a senior consultant and a junior consultant. Those are the people who are gathering requirements, doing a lot of the configuration, testing, those kinds of things. We might have a developer, and then we've usually got a solution architect that's partnered with the team. And essentially, we're in charge of helping to make sure that as we go into these projects, we're gathering requirements from the customer. We're thinking about systems, sometimes multiple systems, right? And we just want to make sure that, for me, what really a solution architect is, it's the person that can see how the string goes all the way through. When you think about architecting a house, and you think about your house, right? You got an electrical system in your house, right? If you were to open up the wall and you've got an electrical wire in your wall, right? You need somebody who knows how that traces through the house. And if you cut it, what that's going to affect, right? if you split it 7 ways, what that's going to affect. And if you bypass it for some reason, right? So you got to have somebody who's kind of got that overall knowledge. And even if you don't have the knowledge, that you're helping people think about those things, right? That you're pointing something out. Hey, did you think about this? Did you think about that? We might want to ask this question, right? So it's helping to sort of guide the other team members as they're doing the configuration, as they're gathering the requirements. It's helping to guide them to understand sort of that overarching how we're going to build this solution. So it's pretty fun. It's also a lot of training and helping other admins, helping consultants, helping other business analysts learn to think a little differently so that they can even elevate in their job.
That's awesome. So if you love to learn, it sounds like a great role for that.
Definitely.
Awesome. So, as you mentioned, you have experience as a Salesforce admin as well. For those who may be considering, different roles and maybe interested in one or both, can you kind of talk about the differences between them with respect to responsibilities, the training required, daily schedule, and so forth?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to be different in every company. So, keep that in mind. And it started out different as I was less mature in my position as well. So as an admin, even, when I was at JLL and we had junior admins and other admins on our team, I'll kind of speak to that a little bit too. The admin role is really a lot of the role that, you are sort of that day-to-day, right? Person who is really the one who is making a lot of the configuration changes, who's got to understand how the system is set up. You need to learn how to adjust page layouts, what page layouts are assigned to people, why they're assigned to people. Sometimes we forget that part, is it's not always about the what, it's a lot of times about the why. And to be a really great admin, understanding the why of things is going to keep you stepping up along that path, because anybody can find out what to do, right? From Trailhead, we can all find out what to do and how to do it. Why it's done the way it's done in our current company is a whole different story. So from an admin perspective, my day-to-day as an admin was really, a user would contact us and say, hey, I can't run this report. I would help them set up a report the way it needed to be set up. I would take some requirements and configure those requirements in the sandbox and help our users test the requirements. Again, it kind of depends on the makeup of the team that you're on. And if you've got a team that's a little bit bigger, you've got business analysts that are kind of gathering requirements and you're kind of doing the doing as a configurer. You might have some teams that have a support group and they're providing the first layer of support and you're doing some of the configuration behind the scenes. You might get into a small company where you're doing all of those things, which to me was really fun, because it means you get to learn about them all. You get to learn about the company. You get to kind of put your fingers and your hands in all kinds of things. And so it's a little bit of a different beast, kind of just depending upon the size of the company and the makeup of the team you're going into.
Well, that's great. What are some things that you did to prepare for that initial role when you were first starting out?
That's a good question. So it was way back when, 2007. That was a really long time ago. But went to admin training. At the time, they didn't even have certifications. And actually, small coincidence. I don't know if any of you know Erica Cool, but she is one of the original builders of the Salesforce community. She was around Salesforce for a very long time. She was actually my trainer in my Salesforce admin class back in 2007. So she was a trainer before she got into the community side of things. And so took that training class. And then at the time, there weren't that many user groups. Again, social media was, I think it was just MySpace at the time, it was a long time ago. And so it was a little harder to kind of get into things. After a few years, I moved to the Dallas area. I was in a small town, moved to the Dallas area, and the Dallas area had a user group. Guess what? Joined the user group. And then I joined Twitter. I think it was in 2010, I joined Twitter, and that gave me access to all these cool people who were posting about Salesforce, right? And the Trailblazer community. And I could just ask questions, and it didn't matter what I asked. Somebody go, oh, hey, I've done that before. I've seen that error before. Here's how you go fix that. And you can't be shy. You just got to ask, because guaranteed somebody's seen it or done it or knows how to point you in the right direction. Make use of those free resources. And then guess what? You're building your community of cool people that you can contact when you need to. So that was really the biggest thing that I did to learned from other people, reached out, asked questions, and that type of thing.
Yeah, you bring up a good point in that you don't have to know everything, obviously, because you can't. The Salesforce platform is so vast with all the associated clouds and products. But as long as you know where to go to get the information, that's really the key.
Bingo. Yeah, absolutely.
Is obviously a huge enabler for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Trailblazer Community, Twitter, LinkedIn. Yep. LinkedIn is huge. The user groups. Figure out what works for you. You don't have to do them all. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm not on Twitter. That's okay. Twitter is a different beast. I'm not on TikTok, but there's some Salesforce TikTok stuff out there too. So figure out what works for you and kind of build that community.
Yeah, that's great. Whether it's virtual or face-to-face. I started out with face-to-face Salesforce Saturday meetings, which are fantastic. And then obviously with COVID, we all had to move virtual, but now there's so many opportunities to join virtual meetings that there's really no excuse not to be involved in a community. There's tons to choose from.
Yep, exactly. And make use of it, because again, if you're not, then you are doing yourself a disservice, because there is so much just, hey, I've done that. Here's why it didn't work for us. Or you might want to think about this. You might want to think about that. That's the kind of stuff you get from the community that you're not going to get from a help document or a Trailhead trail. You might get a little of that from Trailhead, but not to the level that you'll get from someone who's been there, right?
Yeah, exactly. And not to mention, it's great for your brand, which, that's one of the focuses for these sessions, to talk about brand, and we're definitely going to get to that. But that's really where I was able to connect with the broader community to be able to build a reputation and get noticed, because, it's a vast ecosystem. So you have to take steps to get noticed if you want to do well and make a name for yourself.
You do. And, it's definitely not all about that, but the more you do that, the more you make those connections, the more you put your name out there, the more you post, right? Even if it's a post that, hey, I don't know how to do this, I got screenshots, somebody help me. People start to recognize your name, right? They start to engage with you. And the more you do those things, guess what? The more opportunities pop up that you wouldn't expect, and that you might not notice or have seen because you weren't engaging, right? So that's the kind of thing that that is really gonna help get you on some of those paths for sure.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's funny because one of the ways I was able to get my start was going to a meeting in Boston, a Salesforce meeting, and I forget what exactly it was, but it was a learning session, and I met Mark Baseman, and we got to talking, and he's like, hey, have you heard about the Salesforce podcast? And of course, the admin podcast, I'd heard about it. Do you want to be on it? And so he introduced me to a bunch of folks, and so it all started with a conversation, because I chose to make the drive up to Boston and talk and engage with my authentic self. So yeah, great points.
Absolutely. Even things like, you're seeing a lot of community events pop up, right? The Dreamin' events, they call them, that are community-led conferences. And they've got call for speakers. Guess what? I know it's hard to put out there because maybe you don't have a topic, but between 3 of you, if you get together and you come up with something that's a panel driven thing, right? That you're all just kind of round robining, or maybe there's something that you're like, you know what? I've never heard anybody speak about that. Put in to speak. It's a little daunting. And it's a little scary to begin with, but I guarantee you do the first one and you're going to be like, okay, well, that wasn't bad. That was amazing. People actually nodded and were engaged while I was speaking. And then guess what? People remember your name. You can get into the next one. You also get in free, right? Which is a bonus as well. So, try those things.
Yeah, that's also a great point. And it's an extremely supportive community, I think, as everyone knows. I've never heard anyone boot off stage, so.
No, so Eric Dreschfeld and I went to Tahoe Dreaming a few weeks ago, And we kicked off the keynote by doing a session called You Might Be an Admin If, as a play on the You Might Be a Redneck If. And that's all it was. It was a comedy session where we just had a bunch of one-liners, and we got picked for a session and our ticket got paid. So, think outside the box. And then guess what? People laugh and they love it and they remember your name.
Yep. Awesome. So I wanted to dive back into the discussion of roles. What made you decide to switch from being an admin to a solution architect? I was interested in that when I was looking at your profile.
Yeah, it's really funny because it was actually it was scary. I'll be honest. I had worked at that company. I started there in 2012 and we were really small. We had like 120 people. We grew up to about 400 and then we got acquired by Jones Lang LaSalle, who has 80,000 people. So big change in this really small company to this very big behemoth company, but I owned the org. It was mine, right? I built that platform. I knew it from end to end and built it. And it was complex and complicated and it was my baby. But over time, you get a little limited, you get a little boxed into the things you can implement and learn, because there are things your company just doesn't want to do or isn't willing to do, maybe doesn't have the money to do. And then there's also, when you get to a big company like that, sometimes IT decides to make changes to how your group is structured. And that's one of the things they were doing, is they were actually taking our team and they were going to kind of split us up. And I was going to go move into an engineering group. Some of our other admins were going into a support group, a training group. Our product manager was going into product management, and we were all going to kind of manage the org a little differently. And again, it was my baby. And at the time I was like, I'm not sure that I like the way that this is going. I'm not sure that I want to go work in engineering. I don't feel like an engineer. I was a little nervous because they couldn't guarantee that I was going to stay working on Salesforce even, because you were just kind of going into a pool. And I really, it's my thing. Salesforce is my thing. It's my jam. And so I was like, okay, I need to start kind of looking around and making some decisions. And when I was actually looking for senior admin positions and talking to people, and they're like, what are you doing? You have so much experience in the community. You've got to start looking for these architect positions. And I'm like, well, but I don't have the certification. I'm not really an architect. I don't have a college degree either. You see all these job postings and they're like, you gotta have a college degree and you gotta have these certifications. And finally, I don't know who it was a multitude of people sort of talked me off that imposter syndrome ledge and said, look, just put in for stuff, right? You've got the name out there, you've got the qualifications, and really the positions just kind of fell in my lap. So I think what it is we've got to stop holding our own selves back because of our own perceived notions of what other people might be expecting. We got to walk into that room and go, you know what? I know my stuff. And even if I don't know it, I know where to find it out, right? And I'm pretty cool and I can learn. So guess what? I'm going to be a really awesome employee for you. We got to have that confidence to do that. It's really hard, but we got to get out of our own head space and our own head trash.
Yeah, that's great points, all. I appreciate you talking about that. And I guess really the meat of what I wanted to get into tonight is best practices for how to be successful in both roles. So if we could start with admin, for the folks that may be considering starting out as an admin and looking for those best practices, those techniques that maybe you learned through your time that were really linchpins in your success, that you noticed really impacted the organizations, and helped you achieve success in your role. If you could, talk about those, I think that would be really interesting and helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay. So when I was an admin back in the day, and I'm gonna talk early days admin, not later days. And I think, for me, some of the really key things that an admin can do is number one, you got to learn the business. You can't just come in and think, I'm just going to admin the technology. Okay, because you can do that. To really succeed as an admin, you got to learn the business. You got to understand the business processes, right? And sometimes that means you've got to step up and go, you know what? I need to go talk to the sales manager and the sales leaders and understand their process, right? I'm here trying to manage the software and manage the CRM and understand how opportunity stages work. And sometimes people call me because they wonder why this didn't happen or what to do when this happens. I really got to understand that underlying sales process, right? So, for me, it's really important to understand that business process. One of the things that will also do for you as an admin is if you show interest that you can understand the business processes, right? Then automatically some of the leaders and some of the higher ups see that you're not just an admin. You can advise on more than just building fields, right? So if you're thinking about admin as a role to kind of move along, those are some really great things to do. I think security for me, and understanding that inside and out from a technical standpoint is really, really important as an admin. You can really mess up an org if you don't understand security. And if you come into an org that's already built, what's the first thing you need to do? Understand the security, right? So that you can troubleshoot and you can help people and you can put a field where it needs to be, right? Because you know who needs to be able to see it and what security to give it and all of those things. So to me, that's really just a baseline. If you're going to start learning something first, is learn about profiles and permission sets and sharing models, and how to manage a lot of that sharing, visibility and security. So to kind of get you off on the right foot, there's so much from an admin perspective, being able to build great reports for users. Mike Geralyn on the Admins podcast always talks about SABWA. If you hear him talk about SABWA, and it's Salesforce Admin by Walking Around. That's what that stands for. And we can't do that as much anymore because of COVID, but you can still do it. So there's other ways you can do it. Used to, it was like I get up and I walk over and I'm like, show me what you're doing, right? So you can see how they're clicking and what they're doing. And you can then maybe help them, give them tips and tricks on how to do things faster. And then it might also alert you as to something that's a little clunky for the end user that nobody's ever mentioned, right? That you can help fix for them. So in this world, in the COVID world, you can do that by, saying when somebody reaches out to you, hop on a Zoom and say, show me your screen. Use the new Slack feature where you can do videos, right? And have them send you a quick little video, of what they were doing when they got that error, right? And maybe it's setting some time aside to meet with people to just get them to give you their take on how they're using the system. Because a really great admin is really concerned with the user experience, right? You want to make sure that your users are having a really great experience. Because guess what? Happy users means happy leaders. Happy leaders means guess what? They love you as an admin team. And sometimes it's all about getting to that end and learning to be loved.
Yeah, I really identify with learn the business. From my perspective, when I came into my current role, which is a solution engineer, I think I had half the equation. So I had been a consultant, I had done implementations, I had been a junior solution architect for a consulting firm, and so I felt fairly comfortable with my technical abilities, but I didn't know the business. And even though, and to kind of provide context, the business is Department of Defense, which sounds funny because I'm a retired Navy officer. But I didn't understand the business of Salesforce as it relates to the Department of Defense. And so I only had half of what I needed to do the job. And so now I'm kind of playing catch up. For those folks that may be in new roles, what are some activities that you, set up or things that you did to learn the business? How did you get there?
Anybody?
Derek, you've got a hand raised.
Hey, David and Nana, it's nice to be a part of this live. I'm not in a new Salesforce role, but I've got a lot of career experience. And one of the last things I did was get into ready-mix concrete quality control. And quality control is a completely separate aspect of the business than the main production line. So what I did, and I was lucky I was afforded the opportunity, is I took some time to shadow the sales team, the operations team, the maintenance department, even though my job had nothing to do with maintaining concrete trucks or anything. I took the time to shadow those departments so I understood the business as a whole completely. You know, what was I going into when I got a call that we were going to lose a truck because it broke down on the side of the highway and we needed to figure out what to do with the concrete, you know, things like that. So if you're in a good company, which I've been afforded the opportunity to be a part of quite a few, ask for time to shadow the other departments and let them know that that's why you're doing it, is so you can get a good overall view of it, so you understand the business inside and out, and you can jump on a role that may not necessarily be yours if they need help with it later on down the line. So just a little bit of my experience with it.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Derek. I love that. And that's a great point. And so you mean, to your and Nana's point, the whole kind of SABWA concept comes back in, and it's whatever you're doing, whether you're a solution architect or you're an admin or you're a solution engineer, walking around and meeting with the different business teams and getting their perspective, looking over their shoulder as they interact with the system, whatever that system happens to be, and taking those notes and taking that back to to your desk to figure out how you can improve whatever it is their workflow is. So that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yep.
Geralyn, you've got your hand raised.
Hi, David. Good to see you. I know it's been a while since I've been able to make the call. I was happy to make it today. But yeah, so I'm not in an admin role, more in a consultant business analyst role. But for me, working with multiple different industries, I think it's been really important to sit down with those business owners, have those meetings, find out what they like, what's causing them pain, and then always making sure that as we're going through meetings, if there's a word I don't know or a concept that I don't know, writing it down so I can go back after and look that up. And then also making sure, based on the industry that I may be working with for the clients, what I make sure I do is know kind of what trends are happening in that industry. So if I hear something come up, I kind of know what direction the industry might be moving in, so that when I present potential solutions, I'm able to present something that's forward thinking, and ask those questions that might get them to move along the path to where the industry is moving.
That's awesome. Thank you, Geralyn. And I want to focus on what you said, which is asking questions. I think as folks who may be new in a position, sometimes we're afraid to ask questions because we don't want to appear like we don't know the answer or we're new. But there's probably others in the room that maybe missed that acronym or don't understand fully what the customer's talking about and would benefit from you being brave enough to step up and ask the question. So that's a great point. Thank you.
Yeah, I would absolutely echo that. You can't be afraid to ask the question. You know what? You're new, especially if you're new in the role. You can't be expected to know everything. Can you explain that concept to me? Cool. Oh, wait, can you walk me through that? And help me understand that. And then sometimes it's things like when, from an admin perspective, sometimes you get a request. Hey, I need you to add this field, right? It's a pick list field. Okay, cool. You can walk away and just add the field. Or you can say, let's talk about this field. So what are we going to use this field for? And who's going to be entering data into this field? Who's responsible for that? Who's going to be making sure that the data that gets entered is correct, right? That people know how to enter the right data into the field. And then let's also talk about how we're going to report on it and use the data, because that might say we don't want a pick list field. Maybe we want something different, right? So asking a lot of those questions, really ask questions over and over and over again to get a full understanding so you can go back and take a look at everything and really make a good suggestion for what to do here. Because a lot of times people come to you with solutions instead of asking you to help solution. And so being able to kind of flip the script a little bit by asking questions by really raising your hand, by understanding the business, or at least the very least asking questions about the business as they come to you with that solution. Hey, I don't understand why you might want to use this, right? Can you give me some more context around that?
Yeah, great points, Nana. And it all revolves around great discovery. I like personally the 5 why concept, where you just successively ask why as you dive down deeper into the underlying root cause or reason why people do things or why people want things, to really be able to understand it at the base level. Michael, you've got your hand raised. Did you have a question or comment?
Thank you for saying what you did about walking around and all of that, because I was an intelligence analyst for many years, and that's how I did my bread and butter. And now hearing that that's what makes you successful on the outside as well, sort of puts me a little at ease. So thank you. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really cool to hear. It's interesting because, you know, sometimes you think, right, you're in a niche, I guess, better way to say it. Thank you. And that we do things differently, right? It's not the business world, it's not the technology world, but you know what? A lot of stuff just it's the same in different ways, and maybe it's different terminology, right? But it is all the same. We got to start, right, with we got to start with our why. We got to look at our how before we get to our what we're going to do. Right. And that's the same anywhere. That's at home, in our personal lives, at work, right, with our friends, all the things, right? We've got to have a good frame of reference and sort of realize, I think, that just because it's a different business, right? Just because that really these same concepts are what helps get us through.
Great points. And awesome. So this has been great. I wanted to shift gears a bit and kind of talk about branding and networking, because it's this nebulous term that if you know, especially if you come from the military or you're a military spouse and you haven't had previous experience to it, which I didn't when I was transitioning, you may not really know what a brand is, why you should care, or how to create one. But I would argue it's essential in any role, regardless of whether you're, you know, Salesforce or not Salesforce affiliated, but especially with this ecosystem, it is critical. And so, you know, with Nana, with regard to creating and sharing your personal brand, how would you define your brand, and what are some of the activities that you engage into marketing to market it?
Yeah, that's really interesting. We talk about brand, and I'm like, my brand, huh? I guess I have a brand. You know, my brand is, I tell my 17-year-old son that I have more Twitter followers than he has. I just topped 5,000. Thank you. Very exciting. But, you know, from a brand perspective, my brand is really, I am super authentic about what I'm passionate about. I am passionate about learning. End of story. I love to learn new things, right? And that is where I'm passionate about. It's where I have the best voice. I like it when I learn something new and I can teach somebody and, you know, show them what to do. And so, you know, back in the day, I started a blog and started my Twitter handle, and even on the Trailblazer community. It's really about, you know, kind of just, I would constantly like post about, you know, here are some of the new things that I learned. Did Tuesday tips for a really long time on LinkedIn. I need to get back into that because it's a lot of fun. Just every Tuesday I would post a tip, just something cool and new that I think people might not know about because it's exciting. Because I'm like, what? You don't know that? It's so much fun. And so, you know, I've always tried when I've even write my blog posts, just like I'm talking now, that's how my blogs read. I don't try to be anybody other than who I am. I'm not trying to be some other person. And I think to me, that's the key about developing your brand. Find the thing that you are passionate about, right? Within the community. If you're passionate about like security, you know, some people are. If you're passionate about analytics, not my favorite thing, or, you know, marketing, wherever that thing is that you've kind of found. Maybe it's helping people, right? In-app guidance, things like that. Find that thing that you're passionate about and make that your brand, right? Join all the groups. Talk about it all the time. Post a tip. People tell me, I don't know what to post on LinkedIn. Well, I don't either, you know? And sometimes I pick up something and I'm like, everybody's probably already heard this before, right? You can find this on the community. People already know this, but you know what? Somebody doesn't. Somebody's brand new. Somebody doesn't know it. And it's okay if 80 people know it. If one person sees it that didn't know it, guess what? They've learned something and you've taught somebody something. So post it. Who cares? Who cares if nobody's going to comment and go, everybody knows that already. That is not how this community is. They'll be like, oh yeah, that's a cool feature. So just find something that you're passionate about and be authentic about it and go all in.
Yeah, those are great points. And to circle back on something you mentioned, content really is what drives your brand. And to your point, it doesn't have to be this earth-shattering, original new content. It can be something that that maybe you shared from somebody else that half the people that are looking at your content didn't see, and they're appreciative of the fact that you're highlighting it again. And I know there's several folks on this call that share the posts that I put out with their communities. So for example, Derek Scott, who's on the call right now, really appreciate the fact that he shares the posts and he injects some humor into it. So I always look forward to reading my posts as shared from him because he's got a great sense of humor and it's worth a laugh. And obviously I appreciate it from a branding perspective because he's getting the word out. Geralyn, puts together a kind of the insightful points from each session and shares resources connected to those insightful points. And so that's really cool. And so, if you're new and you don't necessarily, have a whole lot of experience, you don't have to Nana's point, post about something that you're passionate about, that you're interested in, and grow that.
Mm-hmm.
And something that Nana said earlier, if you have questions, that can also be a post. And that's how I got started. I just asked questions until I knew enough to be able to offer something in return. And then, then I went from really asking questions to posting original content. And now obviously that's morphed into posting live sessions and sharing them on YouTube. So you can't get good at it unless you start.
Mm-hmm.
And again, to Nana's point, it's a very kind community. So, no one is going to come down on you for trying to share something with the group and advance, the state of knowledge and enrich the community.
Not at all. Not at all. And what is going to happen, I mentioned this before, is it gets your name out there, right? And you start to meet people. You start to make connections with people, just like Dave did with Mark. And those people can open doors. I started out and my very first Dreamforce that I went to it was 2012. They had a Meet the MVPs happy hour. And at the time I was on Twitter and there were some MVPs like Steve Moe and Cheryl Feldman and a few others that were always answering my questions. Brian Kwong, and they were helping me out with all of these things. And I was like fangirling at the Meet the MVP section. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. I'm meeting somebody in person who's helped me. And guess what? They're just normal people. They're just like you and I. They are. They just started out before we did, helping people. And they got to a position where they got, right? But they still helped everybody. They still do to this day. Right? That it's just the nature of this community giving back. And then there I was in 2019, 5 years later, and I was one of the admins in the admin keynote. Never would have thought in 2012 that I was going to be one of those people up on the keynote stage. And then here we are a few years later, and a few weeks ago I filmed a reality show for Salesforce Plus. Seriously, what? It's gonna air in January, but we did a reality show where we competed against each other to solve a problem for a nonprofit.
Awesome.
It was so much fun, and there was some drama, just so you know. But that's the kind of thing that just by getting out there. I mean, really, I haven't done anything that I just learn and help people and comment in the community and do stupid comedy sessions at community events, and I'll do real sessions. I do sessions on flow and things like that. But it's sometimes just about getting out there and not necessarily being afraid. If you are afraid, partner with somebody. You know, I'll do a session with you at a conference. Call me, tell me you have an idea, let's do it. You know, it's doing those kinds of things, and it just starts to open doors for you. And then my kids are like, Mom, you're kind of like Salesforce famous. And I'm like, you know, what is that even? What is Salesforce famous? I don't think that's a thing, but it's kind of cool.
I'm going to call you for a co-session.
I'm here for it.
Awesome. Iris was asking, on Salesforce Plus, I know, is it still, and I should probably know because I work there, but there's other folks on the call who do also work at Salesforce who might know, is that still free? And where can she watch that?
It is free. Just go to Salesforce Plus, like type in Salesforce Plus into Google, and it'll come up. And they've got lots of different shows that they've been putting together so far. On all kinds of things, lots of different interview shows and business shows and things like that. This is the first reality show that they're trying, and it will come out in January. So they haven't published it yet, but it'll come out in January. I'll be posting on LinkedIn, of course, about it. So follow me there, but it should be fun. And that's the first of many. All they did was they like put a call out. Hey, anybody interested? And you filled out a little form, and they're going to be looking for more people to do those kinds of things. So, you know, that's the kind of thing. Just put your name in the hat. You never know. They might call you.
Yeah, you too can be Salesforce famous.
Exactly.
We've got a question from Stephanie, and she says, what's your opinion on breaking into the Salesforce ecosystem? Do you feel it's best to start in an admin role, or is it possible to jump into a solution engineer or consultant role if you have other transferable skills? For example, analytics consultant role, Tableau, dashboards, data visualizations, and you have some training and prep courses.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You can jump into other roles. I think right now the environment's pretty competitive from what I understand. And there's a lot of people looking for stuff, right? So take those extra skills you have and play them up. Because people are definitely looking for people who have extra skills. I mean, my company, we're hiring consultants right now, and we don't always hire consultants who have Salesforce skills. Sometimes we hire consultants who have just a ton of consulting skills, and maybe they've consulted on other platforms, you know, other technology platforms, right? Maybe they haven't, you know, but they just got really great consulting skills, and they can pull requirements out of people and talk to them about them, and we can train them on Salesforce, right? So I would say definitely play up the skills, but here's the thing. The job world right now is hard. It's hard to find a job. Take an admin role, you know, to get your foot in the door, especially one that you know that there's upward mobility, right? Because you get in there and then you do what? You Salesforce admin by walking around or by zooming around, and you learn the business. And at one point when I was working, before we got acquired by JLL, our CEO came to me and our platform owner and said, you know what, we're looking at being acquired, and we've got to put all this stuff together for this acquisition package. And the only people that really know end to end how our business works were the three of us in the room, she as the CEO, and me and the platform owner, because we had to know end to end how the business ran to be able to set it up on the platform. That's a really powerful position to be in. And I was the admin, you know? So you can start out as an admin and really work your way up. Don't think of that as a limiter at all.
Yeah, I've seen admins become indispensable just based upon the level of knowledge they have of the business. From a solution consultant perspective, you know, the two admins that I was on the project with on the customer side were always on the calls, and leadership was always looking up to them because they had the best understanding of what the business needed to see from a solution perspective. And so they were absolutely indispensable. And to piggyback, Stephanie, on your question, from a solution engineer perspective, and I know we have other solution engineers on the call, including Don. From my perspective, you can absolutely come in if you're new to the ecosystem, but you have to have kind of one half of the equation. So in order to be, in my opinion, a good solution engineer, you have to be technical, and you have to know the business / be a good consultant. So if you come in and you're really technically savvy, then they can teach you the business, right? And to an extent, they can teach customer facing skills, consulting skills. Or I've seen folks that have no Salesforce experience, but they have established relationships with the customer base. They know the business very well, and in which case they were hired and they were simply taught Salesforce. So as long as you have one of those sides of the coin, you can absolutely come in as a relative newcomer to the ecosystem, and just, as long as you love continuous learning, which I think most of us on the call do, otherwise we probably wouldn't be in the ecosystem, you'll be totally fine.
Yep, agreed. And be able to, in an interview or as you're talking to people, get across that, look, I might not know all the answers. I'm never going to know all the answers. But I've got connections. I know where to go to ask those questions. I know where to go to help find those answers. I got people I can ask, right? I'm not just going to come up to a roadblock and then stop, right? That's the nature of this business, is that things change every single day. We got to keep learning. We got to keep embracing those changes, right? And we've got to make the connection so that we can reach out and reach into our network and really help augment the things that we know. It doesn't mean I have to know it, right? I have to be able to find somebody that knows it so they can either teach me it or I can bring them in. And sometimes that means you can go into a job where you don't have all the knowledge. If you can help them understand that you've got those kinds of skills, then they're gonna more likely trust that you can bring those skills with you into the job itself as well.
Absolutely. And definitely be willing to focus on your skills that you may not think are job related, but that you've maybe pulled from other jobs.
Yes.
Like to Derek's point, with construction, all the skills he was mentioning in that construction role are absolutely valuable in the ecosystem. You just need to be able to structure the language to position them correctly to employers so they can understand the value.
Yeah, and even what Michael said, right, about, that's what he did. He would actually use those examples, right? Because again, that's going to resonate and say, hey, I might not have done this in the technical space, but here is what I did, in my other role. And this is how I see it relating to the technical space, right? Being able to tie those connections is going to make your employer go, oh, wow, they've got this breadth of knowledge. And guess what? They didn't grow up in the technical space, so they're not also boxed in by that. Because sometimes people get boxed in because this is what we're used to. This is how we do it in technology. But guess what? You can do things differently, and it's great to bring people from other industries and other areas that aren't always boxed in by this is how we do things, right? Because you've got a fresh aspect and can bring in a new way of looking at things.
Yeah, definitely find ways to emphasize your diversity of experience for sure.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a few minutes left if anyone has any questions, and if not, no worries. I always come with questions, and so while I'm waiting for folks to post in chat or raise your hand, I'm going to pose one. So kind of circling back to the topic of brand, you're a Financialforce Community Leader. How did you, I guess, evolve into that role? And if other folks are like, gosh, I would love to be a community leader, I don't know how, what advice would you offer? What recommendations?
Yeah, so Financialforce, if you don't know what it is, so Financialforce is an application that is built on top of Salesforce. So it is a partner that built an application on top of Salesforce to essentially, there's kind of two main aspects of it. One is project management for services projects. Project management, resource management. You can create a project and it's kind of like Microsoft Project, right? You've got tasks and a Gantt chart. You can assign resources to log time and expenses against a project. But then there's a whole nother aspect that you can do your accounting. So it's a full-on accounting system built on Salesforce. So you can take those projects, that time and expenses, and invoice the customer, post it to your general ledger account, get trial balances, pay people, kind of all the things. And we implemented that really early on in 2012. And so our Salesforce platform was end to end. It was sales, CRM, it was project management, it was resource management, we invoice, we had our full set of books on the system. We literally ran the business end to end. And at the time, Financialforce was young, and they were trying to get a community just like the Trailblazer community. And so guess what? I was learning. So I posted in the community and I asked a bunch of questions, and they didn't really have a lot of people to answer questions because they were new. So as I would learn things, I would post out there about them, right? And then they had conferences, and guess what? I would speak at the conferences, or I would ask questions and just get really involved. Again, it's that I always want to be learning. It's really interesting to me. So I kind of did the same thing in that community. It's a separate community, but it's like the Salesforce community and the Trailblazer community, but it became this little niche, another niche. I can't say that word, gosh. But it became this other thing, right? So now, again, you know, the question about you've got these other skills. Guess what? Got another skill. Conga is something that's really similar. Conga's got its own certification program. They've got their own community of people. Guess what? It's one you can learn, you can get involved in, and then you add that to your resume. You know, because you know what? Right now, Financialforce, there's not a lot of people that know it and know how to implement it, and so it becomes another area where if you can get trained and you can learn it, it opens up the job possibilities. So again, it's just really thanks, Steve. Correctly for a Texan. I love that. But yeah, it just really opens up the door, and it's more along. It's more of that. Find out what you're passionate about. I love to learn. I love to learn all of these things. Give me something new. Give me a new application. It gives me something to learn and sink my teeth into. And then my just natural instinct is, you know what, if I didn't know it, somebody else doesn't know it either. So I'm going to turn around and I'm going to post about it, and I'm going to help answer questions about that. So do the same thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Follow your passion for sure. And, you know, there's so many, I'm going to hazard a pronunciation guess. There's so many niches available that you can focus in. Even today, you know, that there's plenty of opportunities to create your own community. So, you know, for example, like everyone here on the call, I spent about a year on Veterati mentoring folks and discovered that I loved it, and it was a lot of fun, but I wanted to reach more people at scale and spend the same amount of time, but reach more folks. And so I was like, well, I'm just going to create a community. And I sat on that idea for like 2 months because I was terrified that I would fail. And no one would come to my sessions, and you know, I wouldn't be like, I would reach out to people and say, hey, do you want to be a speaker? And they wouldn't return my LinkedIn post. But obviously it's been somewhat successful. So, you know, I would say get out there and start a community. Even if your community is initially only a community of 3 or 4 folks, you're still enriching, you know, the professional lives of those people. And then you can grow that, and you can iterate on it and get better and invite more people in. And that opens up the door to tons of other opportunities to be, you know, to be a speaker, to be a thought leader, and it just kind of snowballs from there and helps you build your brand.
If you can't find one that meets that passion, make one. When I first started back in 2007, there were admin user groups, and that was it. You didn't have all these other types of groups. There weren't women in tech. They called it girly geeks back then, just so you know. There weren't all of these groups that we see now, right? The reason these groups are here is because somebody decided to form it and start meeting, even if it was on Zoom or if it was in person. Salesforce Saturday wasn't a thing until Stephanie decided to start having one down in Austin, you know, and then other people are like, that's a cool idea. I'm going to do that too. And it just built. So if there's something you're passionate about and there's not a community for it, you know what? Start one. Ask a few of us, right, who already have maybe a little bit of a following, like people follow us on LinkedIn. I'll post it. Let me know about it. I'll post it. I'll come to one of your meetings. Let me know. We'll get some people there. We'll help you get it started. Don't be afraid to do that.
That's awesome. Thank you, Nana. We are at time, folks. Before we do close for the evening, I wanted to thank Nana for spending the past hour with us, educating us on the admin and solution architect role. Lots of fun, Nana, and lots of great insights. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. Obviously, I'm a little passionate about Salesforce and about the community. So I am here. Contact me, connect with me on LinkedIn. If you need anything, reach out. I've been in your shoes. So happy to help.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone on the call who made time on your Wednesday evening to spend it here. We appreciate it. So join us next week. We're going to be having another session, same time. And after that, we'll be taking a break for the holidays. to let everyone kind of regroup and spend time with family. But have a safe rest of your evening and have a safe week. And hopefully we'll see you next week, everyone. Thanks so much.